Relax, Victoria. I gave the car to Caleb. Families share assets. That is what my father said when I called him. Laughing as if he hadn't just stolen my $82,000 custom SUV from my driveway. He told me to stop being selfish. That a single woman didn't need a status symbol. I didn't scream. I just asked one question. Did you sign the title? He laughed again. Of course I did. I'm your father. I hung up and dialed 911. I said, I would like to report a felony in progress. Before we see who ends up in handcuffs, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? I want to see how far this story travels. I walked through the front door and locked it behind me. The house was silent. A normal person would have collapsed. A normal daughter would have wondered what she did wrong to deserve a father who stole from her. But I am not a normal daughter. I am a forensic auditor. I spend 50 hours a week tracking how people hide money, how they rationalize theft, and how they bury their sins in spreadsheets. And right now, standing in my hallway, I wasn't looking at a family dispute. I was looking at a crime scene. I didn't cry. Crying implies surprise. And deep down, I wasn't surprised. I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hand didn't shake. My brain was already categorizing the data, stripping away the emotion to find the motive. Douglas didn't take the car for Caleb to drive. That was the lie he told himself to sleep at night. Caleb didn't have a driver's license. He had a gambling addiction and a debt to people who didn't send overdue notices in the mail. They sent them through broken windows and broken bones. I knew about the debt. I knew because Douglas had tried to borrow $50,000 from me 3 days ago. He had called, his voice tight and desperate, asking for a bridge loan for a business deal that didn't exist. I had said no. I had set a boundary. And that was my mistake. I thought saying no would stop him. I forgot that to a man like Douglas, a boundary isn't a wall. It's a challenge. I stood there, gripping the cold glass, and realized exactly what was happening. This wasn't about transportation for Caleb's pregnant girlfriend, Haley. Haley was just the prop they used to make the theft look like charity. This was a liquidation event. Douglas had stolen my car because it was the only asset left in the family with any equity. He wasn't planning to return it. He was planning to sell it to a chop shop or a shady title loan shark tonight, take the cash, pay off Caleb's bookie, and leave me to deal with the insurance claim. And then, the realization hit me. It wasn't just greed. It was something far worse. It was a calculation. For years, I wondered why my father could treat me this way. Why he could smile at my graduation and then empty my savings account the next week. Why he could praise my career to his friends but demand I co-sign his bad loans in private. Standing in that silent kitchen, I finally understood the formula. This wasn't hate. It was math. Cold, narcissistic math. Douglas didn't hate me. He just looked at his ledger. On one side, he had Caleb, his golden boy. His legacy. The son who carried his name but couldn't carry a job. On the other side, he had me. The daughter. The resource. The backup plan. Caleb was an investment he refused to let fail. I was an asset he could afford to liquidate. In his mind, my career, my credit score, and my safety were expendable collateral. Sacrificing me to save Caleb wasn't a crime to him. It was a smart business move. He had weighed my future against his son's comfort, and decided I was the price he was willing to pay. That clarity turned my shock into something useful. It turned it into fuel. He thought he was dealing with a hurt daughter who would cry and complain and eventually forgive him because family is everything. He forgot who I was. He forgot that I hunt liars for a living. He thought he had solved his problem. But he had just started a war he couldn't afford. I sat down at my desk and woke up my computer. My phone was already lighting up on the surface next to me. Ping. A notification banner slid across the screen. Two-factor authentication code. 4920. Ping. Two-factor authentication code. 8831. Ping. Alert. Failed login attempt. State DMV portal. I stared at the glowing numbers and felt a cold, hard knot of disgust tighten in my stomach. Douglas wasn't just driving away with my car. He was sitting in the passenger seat right now, fumblingly trying to crack my digital life. He was trying to log into the Department of Motor Vehicles website to transfer the electronic title. He was guessing passwords. He was probably trying my birthday, or my mother's maiden name, or the name of the dog we had when I was 12. It was sloppy. It was desperate. And it was insulting. He really thought so little of me. He thought my security would be as weak as his conscience. He thought that because he was my father, he had a right to my digital identity just like he thought he had a right to my physical property. He didn't understand that I lock my digital doors tighter than my physical ones because I know exactly what people are capable of when they think no one is watching. I didn't block the attempts. I let him keep trying. Every failed login was a time-stamped piece of evidence. Every requested code was proof of intent to commit wire fraud. He was digging a hole with every incorrect keystroke. And I was just letting him hold the shovel. I opened the manufacturer's telemetry app on my desktop. The map loaded instantly. A single blue dot pulsed on the screen, moving aggressively across the grid of the city. It wasn't at Caleb's rental house. It wasn't at a pharmacy. It wasn't at a grocery store. The dot was tearing down Interstate 95, heading south. The telemetry data scrolled on the side of the screen. Speed: 85 miles per hour. Engine RPM: redlining. Caleb was driving my precision-engineered machine like it was a stolen go-kart. I zoomed in on the map, projecting the trajectory. He wasn't just driving aimlessly. He was heading toward the industrial district, specifically toward a cluster of warehouses off Exit 42. I knew that area. In my line of work, you learn the geography of desperation. That exit was home to Redline Auto and Pawn, a place that didn't ask for credit checks and didn't look too closely at wet signatures on a title. That was the destination. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Douglas wasn't borrowing the car. He wasn't even keeping it. He was liquidating it. He was going to sell my $82,000 asset for pennies on the dollar to a shady title loan shark just to cover a gambling debt before the sun came up. If that car touched the pavement of Redline Auto, it would disappear. It would be stripped for parts or shipped out of the state in a container within 24 hours. I looked at the speed on the screen. 88 miles per hour now. I could call the police and hope they intercepted him. But a high-speed chase with an unlicensed driver was a recipe for a wreck. I didn't want a pile of twisted metal. I wanted my car. And I wanted justice. I looked at the control panel on the app. There was a button I had never used. A feature designed for parents with teenage drivers or owners who used valet services. It was called Remote Speed Limiter. I hovered my mouse over the button. Douglas thought he was in control because he held the physical key. He forgot that in the modern world, ownership isn't about who holds the metal. It's about who holds the admin rights. I took a breath. And I clicked Enable. I clicked Confirm. On the screen, the telemetry data reacted instantly. It was like watching a heart monitor flatline. The speed reading plummeted from 88 miles per hour to 60. Then 40. Then 20. Finally, it settled at a crawling, pathetic 15 miles per hour. I watched the blue dot on the map. It was no longer tearing down the highway. It was limping. The erratic movements of the GPS marker told the rest of the story. Caleb was swerving, braking, probably stomping on the accelerator in a panic, trying to figure out why the high-performance machine beneath him had suddenly turned into a glorified golf cart. He was a sitting duck in the middle of Interstate 95, surrounded by 18-wheelers. He wasn't going to make it to the chop shop on time. And he certainly wasn't going to outrun anyone. Then, I engaged the second phase of the trap. My SUV is a European model, built with a specific anti-theft feature called deadlocking. It's designed to prevent thieves from smashing a window and reaching inside to open the door. When activated electronically, the internal door handles disconnect from the latch mechanism. You can't open the doors from the outside, and more importantly, you can't open them from the inside. I selected the command, Engage Deadlock. The status bar flashed green. Locked. Caleb was no longer driving a car. He was trapped in a rolling cage. My phone rang immediately. It wasn't Caleb. It was Douglas. I stared at the screen. This was the moment where the old Victoria would have panicked. The old Victoria would have picked up and screamed, "Give me my car back." The old Victoria would have cried and begged him to stop hurting her. But I wasn't her anymore. I was an auditor gathering evidence. I accepted the call and put it on speaker. I didn't say hello. I checked the audio waveform on my laptop to ensure the dashcam's microphone was feeding directly to my private cloud server. It was recording. "What did you do?" Douglas roared. His voice was so loud it distorted the speaker. "The car died. Caleb is stuck on the highway. You're going to get him killed, you spiteful little witch. Turn it back on." I sat in my chair, perfectly still. I didn't speak. "Are you listening to me?" he screamed. "Unlock the car. He has to get to the meeting. These people don't wait." There it was. The meeting. These people. He was confirming the deadline. He was confirming the danger. "I know you can hear me," he yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. "You think you're smart? You think you own that car? I signed the title. I signed as your father. I have implied consent. You're my daughter. What's yours is mine. I have the right." I felt the urge to interrupt. I wanted to shout that forgery isn't consent, that fatherhood isn't ownership, but I remembered the most important tactic I learned in fraud investigations. The trap of silence. When you catch a liar, you don't argue. You wait. Silence is a vacuum. Narcissists and criminals hate vacuums. They panic. They feel the need to fill the empty space with justification. And in doing so, they hand you the noose. I stayed silent. I let the dead air hang between us, heavy and suffocating. Douglas couldn't handle it. He broke. "Don't you dare judge me," he spat, his breathing ragged. "I did what I had to do. The papers are signed. I have the power of attorney right here in my hand. I signed your name because you were too selfish to do it yourself. It's legal because I said so. Now unlock the damn doors before I come over there and break yours down. Got you." He had just admitted to signing my name. He had admitted to possessing the forged document. And he had done it all, while the cloud server saved every syllable. I looked at the map. Caleb had managed to limp the car off the highway and was turning into the industrial park. He was heading for the chop shop, crawling at 15 miles per hour, delivering himself and the evidence exactly where I wanted him. "Victoria!" Douglas screamed one last time. I hung up. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. I didn't take my rental car to the police station. I drove straight to exit 42. I parked my nondescript sedan across the street from Redline Auto and Pawn, tucked behind a rusted dumpster. It was a graveyard of bad decisions, a fenced-in lot filled with cars missing bumpers, surrounded by buildings with barred windows. My SUV crawled into the lot, hazard lights flashing, looking like a spaceship that had crash-landed in a landfill. The engine was whining, struggling against the software limiters I had engaged. Caleb pulled up to the main bay door and stopped. I watched through my binoculars. I saw Caleb thrashing around inside, hammering his fists against the window. He was screaming, but the soundproof glass held it all in. He yanked on the door handle. It didn't budge. The deadlocks held. He was trapped in a luxury cage of his father's making. 2 men stepped out of the warehouse. They didn't look like mechanics. One was wearing a leather vest. The other was holding a tire iron. They circled the car. Confused. They tapped on the glass. Caleb was pointing at the lock, frantic, mouthing words I couldn't hear. The man with the tire iron frowned and raised the tool, looking like he was debating whether to smash the window to get the driver or the merchandise out. This was the moment. At first, it would have been dismissed as a civil matter. A stolen car within a family rarely triggers urgency. But this wasn't a theft report anymore. I called 911, calm and precise. "I'm tracking my stolen vehicle at 440 Industrial Way. The driver is trapped inside. Armed men are attempting to break the glass. I fear for his safety." That framing bypassed bureaucracy. Within minutes, police flooded the lot. Caleb was pulled from my SUV, shaking and sobbing. Then Douglas arrived, waving a document and shouting that he had power of attorney and permission to sell the car. I stepped forward. "I'm the vehicle's owner," I said, presenting my ID and title. "And I made the call." Douglas accused me of hacking the car. The officer asked for his paperwork. Douglas proudly handed it over. "That signature is forged," I said clearly for the body cameras. "By presenting it to facilitate the sale of a stolen vehicle, he's committed fraud." The document became evidence. Douglas had handed police proof of his crime. As officers moved to arrest him, Douglas panicked. He slammed his own head into a cruiser, collapsed, and screamed that I had assaulted him. I didn't react. I tapped my phone. "My dashcam uploads automatically," I said. "Refresh the feed." The footage showed Douglas injuring himself. "Get up," the officer said. "You've added filing a false report and resisting arrest." Douglas was cuffed. Caleb followed. The scene was over. I told Haley I wouldn't press charges against her and gave her a forensic accountant's card. Then I left. Weeks later, the cases moved forward without me. I sold the SUV, changed my number, and replaced everything tied to them. When police returned the spare key fob they found on Douglas, I didn't keep it. I fed it into an industrial shredder. Cutting off toxic family isn't cruelty. It's surgery. You don't abandon them. You survive them. And for the first time, I was free.